And welcome to Tuesdays with Tammy. I really enjoy bringing the show to you. And today I have a really special guest that I'd like to share. Zeus Luby is the mentor coordinator for RED Incorporated. His role is to establish a foundational bond with each program participant, which facilitates their trust in RED's intent and the program's curriculum. That trust is critically important and rooted in relatability. Mr. Luby cultivates that relatability by sharing his harrowing story of false accusations, living as a convicted felon, police brutality, near-death encounters, and facing 20 years in prison. He also shares his journey of evolution and growth, detailing how his daughter saved him from his dismal past and fueled him to become the man he is today. Everybody, I'd like to welcome Zeus Luby to Tuesdays with Tammy. Hi, Zeus. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you today.
Great. It's so good to have you. So we're going to just jump right in. Why don't you give me a little bit of background on some of the stuff that happened in your past that you feel like led to you being the person you are today?
So originally I'm from Philadelphia, West Philadelphia. And coming up, starting in that environment, it was we lived in poverty. I started my life off in a small row house. For those who are from upstate, they'll understand what the row houses are, very tiny and cramped. But we lived next to a crack house. You had rats coming out of the floor, roaches running in and out of the food. Pimps and prostitutes going up and down the block, junkies, things like that. And so that was my origin. That's where I started, the kind of environment I was in. From there, we moved down to Georgia when I was fairly young, but we moved into another brand of poverty. Okay. And the hardships I experienced, fighting on a daily basis, dealing with drug dealers up and down the block. I mean, that the drug dealers were the idols. They were the people that everybody looked up to. So they were the ones that everybody was trying to emulate. And so from there, coming up in that rough and tumble environment, I used to get into altercations with the older kids, would gather me and another kid, maybe twice my size, and they would bet money to see who would win in a bare knuckle brawl. That would be a regular thing. Come home with a lumped up face, black eyes, things like that. So I came up pretty rough. And as I got older, I stayed in those rough and tumble environments. And when I was 17, I was arrested for the very first time. I was falsely accused of a crime by my vice principal. There was another situation in high school where I'd gotten into a physical altercation with a teacher. I'd gotten expelled from school, went to alternative school, got kicked out of alternative school. So it was just, I was kind of pinballing through life. I had a terrible temper. And that arrest in high school led to a domino effect. It led the county that I lived in to leave an errant felony conviction on my record. Okay. That I was unaware of. And that felony conviction prevented me from being gainfully employed for many years of my life. And that led to another kind of downward spiral. And that's what led to the subsequent, facing 20 years in prison and working, different jobs just to get by, doing anything and everything that was within legal bounds. So that's just kind of a general overview of the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride that kind of molded me and shaped me into the person I am today and gave me that experience that I used to help other young people.
Okay, so that sounds really challenging. And I'm wondering, what did that do to you mentally? Like, were you ever in a space of feeling like, man, when am I going to get a break? Or were you just like, okay, what's my next hustle? Because I got to get up out of here, but I know I need to hustle to do so.
It was a little bit of both. For a time, given the circumstances and running into roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. I'd gotten to a point where my temper was ferocious. I started off as a very mild-mannered, heart on my sleeve kind of kid, but because of the environments I'd come up in, kids are cruel. Coming up in those environments, I wasn't allowed to stay that way. I was either going to implode or explode, and I opted to explode, and that caused me to be violent at a very young age. That's what led to me fighting all the time. If you said anything sideways to me, I was just swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
Fighting people, like I said, much larger than me, adults, teachers, it really didn't matter. And because my temper was so destructive for a long time, I didn't think I was going to live to see 21. And when I would try to envision my future, I would just see blank, like nothing. And it kind of scared me. It unnerved me. And my mother was a very spiritual woman, and she would have these premonitions and these visions of seeing me getting killed in different scenarios. And of course that added to the fear. So I was trying to make ends meet. I didn't want to go to the streets. I didn't want to sell drugs because I've always been community conscious, despite my temper. I was never a bully. I was always, fighting on behalf of other people. But and so I didn't want to pump poison into my community. So I didn't want to sell drugs. I didn't want to break into cars because I would be breaking into the cars of hardworking people. I didn't want to rob houses because I'm breaking into the houses of hardworking people. So it was very narrow lane for me to
because you couldn't even go out and get a job because of the felony, right?
Exactly.
So it's like, what is a person to do? And so how many years were you in was it prison or jail? Did you actually go to prison? Yeah. How many years were you there?
Now, I never made it to prison, thankfully.
Yes.
I went to jail. I was in and out of jail. I have a bit of a rap sheet. I can't even remember how many times I've been arrested. Never spent more than a week or so in jail, thankfully.
Yes.
But I always had warrants out for me, things like that, running from the cops, just to stay free. But so those experiences, they had me constantly on the edge, not knowing, because I felt like there was no protection, like anything could happen.
There's no place to go.
Exactly. And like I said, never wanted to do anything illegal.
Right.
So when I kept facing jail time, kept getting arrested, kept getting in trouble, and I'm watching my other friends who I constantly encourage, listen, stay out of the streets. You got to stop doing this crazy stuff. And they would never go to jail. And everybody was watching me go in and out of jail. It was just the craziest thing. So I didn't feel like there was anything that couldn't happen. Like I just didn't know what to expect next.
Were you ever like, why me?
Definitely. It took me a long time to figure out why these things were happening to me. Of course, it could lead one to say, well, you know what, if I'm going to get in trouble anyway, I might as well go for broke and earn it. But I stayed away from that. It wasn't until I got older and I really began to, because I would tell people my story. I would talk about the different things that I'd go through casually. And I came to find that it was helping people, that it was helping some people to get through what they were going through, helping other people steer clear of some of the same pitfalls that I had suffered through. And so I began to realize that my hardships were helping others.
Yeah.
And, showing people a sense of resilience, because I didn't turn into a foul person. I didn't turn into a mouth of self. I'll do whatever I need to do to make sure I'm all right, even if it means harming my fellow man. So when people begin to see, they heard what I'd go through, but they saw my disposition and my demeanor, and that I was still positive and pleasant. It was inspiring to some people. And when I began to assess that and calculate those things, I began to realize that, my hardships were meant to help other people, So
Yeah, there had to be, maybe not, but there's possibly a time in your life when there was a struggle mentally inside to try to understand, why was this happening to you? And, maybe even were you ever asking yourself, like, am I a bad person and I just don't realize I'm a bad person because maybe I'm supposed to be a bad person? Because why do I keep finding myself in these predicaments? Or was there something in you inherently that was saying, you know, deep down, you're a good person. You just keep stepping in all the potholes. And you've got to figure out how to navigate those and avoid those so that you can come out on top. And if that was the case, then it sounds like you figured that out when you were sharing your story, that those potholes were meant for you to drop into so that by the time you finally climbed out of them, you could fill them in and close them up. So it might help somebody else to avoid dropping in those same potholes.
Precisely, the latter. Yeah, precisely. It was never a thought of me being a foul person because I knew who I was.
Yeah.
And because there were so many genuinely foul people around me, I knew the distinction between how I treated people. No, not in the slightest. Because again, despite my temper, like I said, I wasn't a bully. I didn't let my temper take hold of me and cause me to damage the people around me I cared about. I weaponized my temper to protect the people around me. So I was all, like I said, fighting on behalf of other people, putting myself foolishly sometimes in the line of fire on behalf of somebody else. So I knew that I was a good person. I just could not comprehend why these horrific things continued to happen to me. And I would, I remember a time where this was at the very beginning of like my daughter, she'll be 17 this year. I was in the midst of, or the very beginning of, a custody battle with her mother. And I was a good father. Her mother wasn't really around much. She'd see her a couple of days out of each month. And so she took her from me, and I had to launch this case, get this case started to get her back. And so I owned a company at the time. And so I needed $10,000 to pay to my attorney to get the case started. $10,000 in escrow. So I'm going around from account to account, collecting all the money that's owed to me. And I'm in a panic because I haven't seen my daughter. I'm stressed out. And on my way home to get ready for work, I had been exhausted and been sleeping because I was so stressed out. I was maybe a mile from the house, and then I blacked out at the wheel and ended up hitting somebody with my car. The person was walking in the street with their back to traffic for whatever reason. And I just so happened to black out right as I was coming up on them. Now, I had driven maybe 40 some odd miles.
Yeah.
1 mile away from the house.
Wow.
And I ended up hitting somebody with my car. And I was arrested for hitting this person with my car, thrown into the back of the squad car with the cuffs cutting into my hand. And now mind you, I have not seen my daughter. I'm trying to get this money together to get my daughter. And I'm concerned that my daughter's mother is going to take my daughter and leave the state with her. Yeah. She has already made that threat. So, and for the past, this had been 3 years that I had been the primary parent. Her mother hadn't really come around. She wasn't helping me financially. So I was being a good father. And my daughter was taken from me wrongfully. She was in great care. And then as I'm trying to get the money to fight for my daughter, this happens. And I go to jail. And I'm looking up at the sky. I've been in the back of the squad car in the blazing sun for like 2 hours. And I'm looking in the sky, sweat pouring, and saying to God, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why would you allow this to happen at all, but especially right now? Because if I go to jail, because the cop kept saying, because the guy was mangled.
Oh.
I was in a state of shock when I saw him. He was a writhing pain. He was blood everywhere. And I was just looking at him, and I started praying for him. I started calling my family to tell them to pray for him. And then the cop threw me back in the squad car, and the cop was saying, if he dies, you're never getting out of jail. And so I'm thinking, I know I'm not a bad person.
Right.
Why in God's name would this happen? What could possibly be the silver lining, the greater purpose for this to happen to me right now while I'm trying to get my daughter? Because if I go to jail, I'm going to lose my daughter. This makes no sense. So situations, intense situations like that, just I was just befuddled and completely lost as to the purpose in the moment, you know?
So ultimately, two questions. Did you end up going to jail? Did the guy live?
He did live. I went to jail. I bonded out. It created another case alongside my custody case. I had
And
to
more
hire
money
another
to bond
attorney.
out.
Exactly. More money to bond out, another attorney. I paid my debt to society. Um, I ended up contacting the guy's mother and explaining the situation and apologizing, um, and so ultimately it worked out. The guy had just gotten out of prison. He had just gotten out of prison. He was working at a fast food restaurant.
Wow.
And, I still don't know why it happened.
He has to be asking himself too, why is this happening to me?
Right. But, of course, that story, it inspires, it motivates, people. I'm glad he survived. That's really all I was concerned about, because at the time the police officer thought I had done it on purpose for whatever reason.
Oh, yeah.
And he was very combative, and I kept asking him how the guy was. And he would say initially, "You don't care. You don't care. You hit him on purpose." And I kept telling him I blacked out. And then finally, I had to yell at the cop and tell the cop, "I don't care what happens to me. I just want to know how the guy is doing." And in that moment, he saw that I was genuinely concerned. And so and he told me, it's not looking good. So thankfully, he survived.
Yes.
And everything worked out. So it's hard to say that given the circumstances.
Yeah.
But the story that almost broke me. Like, I lost hope when I was sitting in jail. I was like, if he dies, this is it. I'm never going to see my daughter again.
So let's go back to, first of all, how did you end up with primary custody for your daughter's first 3 years, and then her mom was able to take her? I don't know if she came and snatched her or if legally she came and took her. But first of all, how, because it's not common that the man usually gets custody of the kids. And especially with your history, you think that, that might make it tougher for you to have gotten the custody of your daughter. How did you end up with custody of your daughter in the beginning?
Well, in the beginning, when we were living we began living together after her mother got pregnant. It wasn't planned. We'd only dated for a short period of time prior to her getting pregnant. And when she told me she was pregnant, I knew it was going to be a rough road. I mean, we were both struggling financially. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a job at the time. But I told her, I said, I'm not ready in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I'm not ready financially, spiritually, psychologically. I'm not ready. But I promised her, I said, I'm going to do everything in my power to accelerate my maturity so that I can be everything I need to be for you and our child. And so she was one way prior to the pregnancy, and then she shifted gears once she became pregnant. Okay. And it was strange because she became immediately, more aggressive and unreasonable. And I was like, wait, let's just put a plan together, so we can approach this logically. And she was like, I don't need a plan. I got it figured out. I helped to raise my brothers and sisters and cousins and nieces and nephews. I'm good. I got this. I was like, well, this is us now. Let's put a plan together. But she made it clear. She said, listen, I was being a certain way while we were dating so that you would continue to like me. But now that I'm pregnant, I don't have to do that anymore. So of course, me being young and foolish, I had been duped, but it was a little bit too late for that. So I just told her that I would do everything that I needed to do to
Yeah.
make sure that, she was taken care of. And
So
so
she basically
it was,
willingly gave her to you when she delivered because she was like, I'm not ready to be a mom?
Lord, no, no. She gave me a terrible time through the pregnancy. It
Okay.
was terrible. And um I just kind of kept it to myself. I didn't want to shirk my responsibilities or push it off on anybody. So I didn't even tell my family until like 6 months down the line.
Okay.
And so they got involved, and then they began to support us. And she basically said that she was having this child because having a child would give her somebody that would love her unconditionally, no matter what she did, no matter what she said. And
Mm-hmm.
I told her that was a terrible reason to have a child.
Mm-hmm.
But she had this void in her that her father and her mother left. And
Okay.
she was trying to fill that with the baby. And so the baby came, we were living together. I was working, she was staying at home. And then eventually she wanted to work. So I said, okay, you can work. I'll stay home and I'll work on the weekends.
Okay.
And so she got this job. She started dating somebody on the job. And then she eventually threw me and the baby out. She said, get out, because she wanted to move her boyfriend in. So she
Oh,
kicked us out and we
wow.
moved back in with my family. And so her boyfriend replaced the baby.
Yeah. So then she
The,
wants to come back after she sees how cute she is 3 years later and claim her for herself.
well, she took her from me. So once she threw us out, we were going, 1 week with her, 1 week with me, and then that slowly began to fade. And then
Okay.
it was, again, she was seeing her a couple of days out of each month because she was so busy living her life.
Yeah.
So that went on for 3 years. So I was, full-time dad.
Okay.
And she had gotten married, started having other kids. She found out that I was dating somebody and got upset.
Wow.
Mind you, she's married with kids. And once she found out I was dating somebody, she took my daughter from me out of anger
Mm-hmm.
and wouldn't let me see her. And so I called the police to file kidnapping charges. But on the books, despite, me being the primary caretaker, on the books, she was the custodial parent.
Because you guys never went the
So
legal route to make it
exactly,
official. So advice
correct.
you would give to other fathers who might be in a similar
Right,
situation is to know your
right.
legal rights, make sure that they are
Of course.
in writing, and make it official, because that might
Exactly.
help them avoid some of the pain and the stress and the
Definitely.
trauma that you had to go through.
Again, exactly. That's again, as I was saying, um, my hardships have been used to help other people. So immediately after winning custody, full custody, I created an organization called Fighting for Fathers to help educate other fathers on how to navigate
Oh,
through the legal
good.
system,
Okay.
and coaching them through their issues, telling them how to dress when they go to court, how to
Okay.
interact with the judge, how to
Fathers.
modify their interactions with their exes, the whole nine. So yeah, all of those pitfalls, I use that information and those hard knocks to help other people avoid the same
Mm-hmm.
mistakes. Yeah.
Wow. Well, from what I've seen, as I've, been following your journey, you are actually an amazing father to Zeta, right? Is that her name?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Zeus and Zeta.
Thank you.
You are an amazing father to her. She is absolutely beautiful, and I see she's blossomed so well. And I can't believe that she's 17. It seems like,
Crazy.
I haven't been following you that long, but I swear it seems like she must have been like 9 years old. But I don't
Right.
think I was on Facebook then. So I really don't know. It's just like, kids get to a certain age and they're a certain height, and then all of a sudden they shoot up, right? So,
Right.
but just watching, the relationship that the two of you guys have, listening to your history and seeing where you are today. And I also watch how you mentor so many other people and family members that I think it's absolutely amazing. And I really, truly believe that where you were, how you grew up, has truly planted seeds in you that gave you the passion to give back, not just to individuals, but to the community. because I really believe that this is why you are such an amazing person today, is because it's always been inside you. And for some reason, you had to go through all of those, all of the harsh things, the negative things, the setbacks, to understand and appreciate the gift that you have. And I think it's wonderful, and I'm so excited that you are sharing it with us today, because I get to see it because I'm following you, but everybody doesn't get to see it. And I created this platform so that I could have a more expanded reach, to reach people and to talk about mental health issues. And, you know, we could have gone deeper into like how certain things might have affected you mentally. And actually, before we wrap up, I want to ask you, did you ever seek any mental health therapy, counseling for everything you were going through? And did you ever seek therapy to provide it for your daughter, for what she might feel like she is, may need some support or somebody to talk to kind of process feelings? Because kids growing up with one parent, you know, whether it's the father that's not there or the mother that's not there, they always inside internally have questions on why, you know?
Yeah. So for me, coming up, you know, in the Black community, therapy, mental health is still taboo. You know, we're just taught to tough it out, troop through it. And so growing up, I didn't seek therapy. That wasn't on my list of things to do, because I had never seen it done.
Yeah.
But when I got older and I understood the importance of mental health, that's what led me to become a life coach, so that I can help other people, you know, and Black people, you know, because
Yes.
life coaches is less intimidating than therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. So we're more prone to kind of stepping into that, you know, because it's less intimidating.
Yes.
And for my daughter, of course, trying to correct the errors that I saw in my rearing. Yes, she's been to therapy, a multitude of therapists, you know, and, you know, it goes in waves. You know, I'll take her out for a while, put her back in, you know, so she's in therapy now to deal with these issues. Yeah, and I make her understand how important it is, you know, for everybody to go down that road.
Yes. Wow. I don't know if I realized that you were a life coach too. I think you like so many of us these days have multiple things that we are involved in, and
Definitely.
ultimately they all lead back to where our heart is and
Right.
where we are most passionate. So in addition to all the things that I read about you in your bio, and now you're sharing that you are also a life coach, what you did not put on your bio is that you are also an actor. And your most recent booking was it the Brian Banks, the Brian
Brian Banks.
That was your most recent. Yeah, so and you did a great job in that, by the way. I love that movie.
Thank you.
I knew about that story. So
I really appreciate that. Yeah, it was an honor being a part of such a powerful story, you know, something that I can be proud of. And I'm actually, you know, adding that that film to the video curriculum of the Red Ink mentorship program, so that they can draw from the lessons, you know, of that film.
Awesome. I'd like to learn more about Red Ink. Can you tell everybody where they can find you, where they can follow you?
Yes, I am on Zeus Luby, ZeusLuby, on all platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can also do a quick Google search, and you'll find out everything about me.
All right, great. Well, Zeus, thank you so much for joining me on the show, and we are going to wrap it up for now. And I wanted to thank all of you for joining us on Tuesdays with Tammy. We are on every Tuesday at 10 a.m. on YouTube. And I want you to be better today than you were yesterday, and be better tomorrow than you are today. All right, thanks so much. If you'd like to be a guest on Tuesdays with Tammy, please contact me at www.tammyvaughn.com.